Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Knockout Analysis presented by Cronio Media. I am your host, Ethan Chronister. This is your co-host, Whit Barnes. Today we're going to be jumping right in to UFC Fight Night in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The main fight of this one will be Charles Oliveira facing off against Mateus Gamrot. But there's plenty of fights to get to before that one. So let's jump right into it.
Amen.
For the very first fight on this card, we have, as Witt calls it, the battle of all ass. Simon Oliveira, Oliveira facing off against Luan Lacerda. There is nothing impressive about this fight that stands out on paper for either of us. I guess Oliveira has cool tattoos, I guess, but that's about it. Lacerda, he's 0-2 in the UFC at this point. He lost to Damon Blackshear in 2023. That was his last fight, by the way. Oliveira, he's coming in. He is 0-3 in the UFC. And he lost earlier this year by knockout to Martinez. This fight is a battle of the mids. I'm going to take the line here on this one. Give me Luan Lacerda to knock off the rust and win a very ugly decision.
Yeah, man, I mean, this is a Brazilian jobber off. You might see a demo fight type fight, that promotion out in Brazil. I think that's the level of this a fight this is. Simon Oliveira did recently just get absolutely bulldozed by David Martinez back in March. And before that, he had a really, really long hiatus before returning to the octagon. These guys have had a combined one fight since 2023. And, I checked. I did some smooth research before we started filming this to see if Lacerda was taking grappling matches, because he does have 10 subs. So I figured maybe this guy's just been grappling and said, you know what, the UFC will be there whenever I want to come back. That doesn't really seem to be the case. I think the line on this fight is kind of ridiculous. And I think that stylistically, wherever this fight goes, is who's going to win. If it stays on the feet, I think Oliveira's going to have a slight advantage. If it goes to the ground, I think Lacerda's going to have a slight advantage. The problem for me is, when I'm looking at this, is Lacerda has only 2 takedowns in the UFC. So I'm not the most confident in the world that he's going to just be able to turn the corner here and just start taking down Simon Oliveira. Simon Oliveira has been taken down a lot in a previous fight, but Daniel Marcos didn't do it, and obviously David Martinez didn't do it because that fight wasn't very long. But I don't know. I think I'm going to go with a hardcore pick here. I think I'm going to take Simon Oliveira. I think it's going to be a decision, a very gritty fight, and I think it's one that could go either way, and the line is ridiculous on.
True. And in case any of you absolute goobers were curious, Kennesaw State currently has a 3-touchdown lead on Louisiana Tech.
Sheesh.
Uncharted territory. That's going to move us into our next fight. We have Julia Pilastri as a huge favorite against Carolina Kowalowicz. We've talked about possibly both of these fighters before. I know for sure we have talked about both of them. So Pilastri coming off of a loss in her last fight to Lupe Godinez, and I believe Miss Carolina herself is coming off of a loss as well. We have talked about Carolina, but it wasn't due to a fight. She's a heavy underdog in this fight. I think this fight doesn't suit her style either, so I think this is going to be an easy win for Pilastri here. I'm going to take the line. I don't see a finish, but I'm going with the line here. Decision win for Pilastri.
Yeah, I mean, it's It's pretty simple, for Kron and I here. Palostri is old, and Karolina Kolakiewicz is very old, and obviously the fight is in Brazil as well. The Lupi Godinez Palostri fight was one of the better women fights that I've ever seen. Palostri looked very good, even though she did take the L there. She has fought a lot of strikers, and stylistically, I agree with Kron. Kolakiewicz will be at a disadvantage. I think this could be the end, for Kolakiewicz. Yeah. What more does she have to prove? She's been in the UFC for well over 10 years, a seasoned veteran. Or actually, it's almost 10 years. Not until December. It's 10 years she's been in the UFC, correction. But I just don't see her being able to hang on the feet on this one. I think that Palostri could get a finish, but I'm going to go with a dominant 30-27 here.
In case you guys haven't realized, I'm pulling off the Diego Lopez look right now with the cowboy hat, so you can't see my eyes. I'm aura maxing just like Diego Lopez was. That being said, we will now move. Well, we're going to take a moment of silence here and remember what was supposed to have been for this next fight slot. That's enough. Walter Walker and Muhammad Usman were supposed to fight here. We were trying to see a fourth consecutive heel hook submission for Walter Walker. We're not going to get that. It was ripped from us because Usman faked an injury and fell down a flight of stairs. So, that'll move us straight into the next one, where we have Lucas Rocha facing off against Stuart Nickel. This is a interesting country matchup for an Australian to be in Brazil to fight here. Pretty even fight odds per ESPN. Lucas Rocha here is going to be coming off of... Why does his hair look like that? Why do you bleach your hair? He's coming off of a loss in his last fight in the Royval Taiara fight night card. He got submitted in the second round by Clayton Carpenter, which is a tough scene for him to be submitted that soon. And then Stuart Nickel here, he is coming off of a loss in his last fight. Duplessis versus Adesanya was the last card he fought on. He also got submitted in the first round to Jesus Aguilar. This seems like a battle. The first person to get someone on the ground is going to get submitted here. I'm going to take the underdog here, in my opinion. He may not be that big of an underdog on the odds. I'm going to take the foreigner in this instance. I'm going to take the Australian to win this fight by a second round submission.
Yeah, I mean, this fight is pretty gosh darn even, if the odds don't say it themselves. Stuart Nickel, Jesus Aguilar, and I believe Jesus Aguilar was an underdog in that spot, and he pulled it out in foreign soil because that fight did take place in Australia. And Lucas Rocha, it's quite impressive that he's 25 and he has 19 fights, May not be against the highest level of comp, but he's went out there and he's beaten the people in front of him on the regional scene out in Brazil and has an LFA win. I think Clayton Carpenter is pretty good. We'll speak about him shortly. But I think Jesus Aguilar is pretty underrated as well. He's went out here and he's looked pretty good in his last two fights, the Nickel one being included in that. Yeah, I view this as a coin toss entirely. I think both these guys are pretty well-rounded. I'm going to take Rocha. Screw it. I'm going to take Nickel. I'm going to take him by decision. It's going to be a close one, though. But if it does end up being close, Rocha could get the nod because he is Brazilian, but I think Nickel's going to do just enough to get it done. Give me a 29-28 for Stuart Nickel.
See, there's a stigma that goes around about women's MMA and why we don't care to watch it. And this next matchup is going to be precisely a case in point of why we don't prefer to watch women's UFC. This is an absolutely horrendous matchup, and it's not got nothing to do with anything other than the fact that I have to watch an ugly Brazilian that's good at submissions face off against an ugly Russian that is good at submissions. So that tells me, I don't know what this tells you, but that tells me I'm going to have to watch these two idiots hug each other on the ground the whole time trying to force themselves into a submission. That being said, this is going to be a very, very ugly, very, very ugly fight for 15 straight minutes. I'm actually going to take our friend Russian Ronda here. I think her experience in the UFC is going to help her out in this one. I think she wins this by fucking, I wish I could say 20-19 decision, but she's going to win it 29-28.
I mean, yeah, we've talked about our good Russian friend here before, a few moons ago, and Bia Mosquito here. I mean, she was the LFA champion pretty recently here, back in June. Man, I don't really understand, man. Like, I say this about a lot of women's fights. I don't really understand the line. Like, what has she done to be a minus 700 favorite with only 5 fights and 34 years old? We got Ira Payton Siva over here, who I definitely picked to win in her last fight. I think Kron may have as well. She went out there and I think she fought a pretty stupid fight that a lot of people thought she was going to win. And I think that could be why the line is what it is. I think a lot of people, well, shit, if you're betting on this fight, you're absolutely nuts, But for the people that are, I think they're very much fading her. And they've made her the massive underdog she is. But I'm going to have to agree with Kron on this one, man. Like, she has a lot more experience in the UFC. She has a finish in the UFC, albeit not against the greatest competition in the world, but I think it's more than what can be said about Bia Mosquito right now, man, because she hasn't done a whole lot. Melissa Mullins isn't a bad loss. Claudia Segula, she's Polish, whatever that means. I'm gonna take this to be a close decision. I might put a pizza in the oven during this one personally and hang out in the kitchen. 29-28, Alex Siva.
That'll move us into the next one where we have Vitor Petrino facing off against Thomas the Train Peterson. We have a former Division I wrestler here and Thomas Peterson. Both of these fighters are coming off of wins in their last fight. Petrino beat Austin Lane in his last fight via first round submission. Before that, he was knocked out by Dustin Jacoby, and the worst of all, he was submitted by Anthony Lionheart Smith. Thomas the Train Peterson, before this fight, he absolutely fucking demolished Dontel Mays. He was knocked out brutally by Gaziev, but before that, he beat Muhammad Usman. I think there's not much to talk about here. I think that Thomas Peterson is a much better fighter, in my humble opinion. I think this is an easy decision victory here for Thomas Peterson. I think he gets this fight to the ground. He's able to fend off the submission attempts, and I think he 30-26s them. I'm being quite honest with you.
Well, Kron and I are going to be in two different ends right here because I don't know if he's going to be able to take Petrino down, It's my number one concern for him, is to be in it because Victor Petrino has shown decent takedown defense in some of his light heavyweight fights, and he looked dominant against Austin Lane, whose calling card is to be a grappler for Austin Lane. He goes out there and he tries to wrestle people. I know his KO resume would say otherwise, but Austin Lane, he does try to grapple quite a bit on the ground. Thomas Peterson, I think he's really good. I think the rankings will be in his future. I think it could be the case for both of these gentlemen, and I think whoever wins this fight will get a shot at a ranked opponent. But I think Vitor Petrino has an advantage on the feet. My only concern is Vito Petrino has had the tendency to absolutely shit the bed. The Anthony Smith fight, you know. I had him losing to Dustin Jacoby. Dustin Jacoby absolutely walloped him with a straight right that sent him straight to the canvas and had him falling down like a cartoon character. But Vito Petrino, I think the heavyweight move has been very good. I think he looks the part. I think he looks built for this division. He has a nice frame. But I'm going to take him to win. Thomas Peterson. Hopefully they give you a Lucas Brzezinski if you lose this, and you can send him to the Shadow Realm and get a nasty highlight.
Update for all my fellow Eagle haters like myself. They are currently down by 10 to the New York Giants. Cam Scattaboo has scored yet another touchdown.
Hell yeah.
So, fuck the Eagles while we're here. That'll move us into our next one. We have Jafel Filio facing off against Clayton Carpenter. This is an absolute slobber knocker, if we're being honest with each other here. Both these guys coming off of losses in their last fights. Nascimento was the claimer of Mr. Filho there via unanimous decision. Mr. Carpenter suffered a unanimous decision loss to Oliveira, which is not a bad loss because if you watched our re-ranking videos, we are both very high on Tagir Oliveira. That's not a bad loss to have on your resume at all. What we have here, I believe, on this one, let me check this out real quick because UFC never has the odds. We have a minus 125 favorite for Clayton Carpenter here. I like that line. I'd probably smash that line if I was a betting man. Give me Clayton Carpenter to win this fight by submission in the second round.
Yeah, as Kron said, we're quite high on this. We're quite high on Tagir Ulanbekov, and the UFC giving him that opportunity really shows that they're high on Clayton Carpenter as well. I think he's a very well-rounded fighter, and I think there's going to be some better opportunities to get ranked in the future. I think there's guys he can beat at the bottom of the top 15. Bruno Silva. Nevertheless, I think Clayton Carpenter is going to have a much higher fight IQ, because I remember the Jalen Fialho's last fight. A lot of people picked him to win that one, as like a sneaky underdog pick, and I didn't necessarily agree, and he came in there, he kind of looked the part at certain moments, but you hear all the time, position over submission. He fights submission over position, and that put him into multiple scenarios that allowed him to get controlled and lose that fight. I think Clayton Carpenter survived on the ground against an elite Dagestani wrestler who has a great submission game. I think he's going to do more than that against a Jafel Fialho. I think I called him Jalen Fialho earlier, whatever. Give me Clayton Carpenter. I think he's going to have the advantage everywhere. If he stays on the feet, he's absolutely going to have an advantage against Fialho. And give me a second round TKO in this one. Actually, give me a first round TKO in this one. I like this line as well.
That'll move us straight into the next fight, where we have Lucas Almeida facing off against Michael Aswell Jr., the Texas kid. Texas kid coming off of a loss in his last fight to Oki, the Zulu Warrior, who's on a little bit of a spill, if you will. He lost his last fight to, what was that guy's name again?
Mason Jones.
Mason Jones, yeah. Lost his last fight to the Dragon Mason Jones. So, I guess you could call it not a bad loss. Almeida here, in his last 3 fights, he loses to Danny Silva. He defeats Kawamba, and he loses to Andre Touchy-Feely by knockout. This one's a little interesting in the terms of the line, in my opinion. I don't think Aswell's a minus 150 favorite. If I'm a betting man, I'm smashing the over on Almeida. I'm taking that all day long. Give me Almeida to win this fight by unanimous decision.
That's fair. Michael Aswell, I will say about him, he has, in a sense, become a fan favorite from the Contender Series last season. He did not get awarded a contract, but him and Bardengrad had a very competitive, high-paced fight. Not like the one from this recent Tuesday, the bantamweight one.
The co-main or the main.
But it was a very good fight. And a lot of people thought Aswell got snubbed out of a contract, and he got that opportunity, and he looked decent against Blagioki on short notice. Like, Blagioki's not the worst fighter in the world, but he's nothing crazy special either, And Michael Aswell, it just seems like he's in a lot of close fights. The Dorian Ramos fight is a fight that I ended up actually watching. I just had the Fury Fighting Championship on randomly, and I watched it. Dorian Ramos was also a Contender Series alum at the time, and that fight played out really close. And Lucas Almeida, I'll say, he is the longer and the taller fighter. He is older, but he is also in his motherland. He's lost close fights to decent opponents. Danny Silva, after his last fight, I think his stock improved against Kevin Vallejos, even though I took the loss there. And there's not really any shame to losing Andre Fili and Zell Huber, Pat Sabatini, Philadelphia man, Pat Sabatini, I think that the competition he's faced, and even though he's lost close fights, I think he might be able to get a close fight here. I don't know. I don't think Michael Aswell does enough to really get definitive wins. And I think this fight is in Brazil. If this fight plays out closely, I think Lucas Almeida is going to get the nod here. Give me a 29-28. Give me a decision on this one for Almeida.
I gotta check Sleeper real quick. I need to see how Brian Burns is doing.
Shout out Brian Burns, bro.
Cam Scadaboo has 18.5 points. If that'll...
Did you start the young man?
Brian Burns has 22.1. Yes, Cam Scadaboo is in my starting lineup. AJ Brown has 12.3. Who am I playing? I'm playing Adam. Shout out Adam Holt while we're here. Love that guy.
I'll let him
Anyways, that'll move us into the next one. We're going to have Ricardo Ramos facing off against Con Offley. What the fuck kind of name is that, bro? Con Offley. I'm awfully sorry, but I'm picking you to lose this fight just based off your name. I'm not going any further into this. Ricardo Ramos is going to win this fight via first round submission.
Yeah, Khan Genghis. Wow, how disrespectful to the Mongolian. Khan Genghis Offley, man, is 0-2 in the UFC. He finished second in The Ultimate Fighter. Y'all already know my opinion on The Ultimate Fighter. If you've ever watched probably any of our shows, The Ultimate Fighters, Dookie and Iron Santos is Dookie. Muhammad Naimov is barely decent, but Khan Offley, he's fighting a savvy, seasoned veteran in Ricardo Ramos.
And his motherland.
Who was a younger fighter with much more UFC experience than Khan Offley. Chepe Mariscal's decent, Arosa's decent, Jordan's decent. Those are his recent losses. Give me Ricardo Ramos in his motherland. I have not been calling a lot of finishes on this card. I don't know. I don't think there's going to be one here either. Give me a strong 30-27.
I think that's a safe bet here. That'll move us
like
in
this, Kron.
to the next one, where we have Yonata Diniz facing off against Mario Pinto. Mario Pinto coming off of a win in his last fight via second round knockout of Austin, the bum defensive end Lane. Oh, that's not his nickname, my fault. Mario Pinto, very large man, very strong man, has yet to be defeated, has a 70% finishing rate on his 10 wins, which is not bad at all. Diniz has 9 wins, 7 wins by knockout, 6 of those wins coming in the first round. He won his last fight against the man Alvin Guzzi Hines via unanimous decision. Got starched by Marcin Tybura and beat Carl Williams in the unanimous decision fashion. He's only knocked out one guy since he got to the UFC, and it's the bum defensive end Austin Lane, who seems to be quite a common knockout victim in heavyweight. So that win holds absolutely zero stock for me. Mario Pinto, I believe, is the better fighter in this one, in this matchup, on this very day or any day. Mario Pinto by first round knockout.
Yeah, I mean, Austin Lane has one win in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and it's from nut-hugging Robelis Despain, who has the grappling of a 5-pound dog, you know. So I agree with Kron in that fashion. I think this fight will be on the feet for the most part. I think if Mario Pinto decides to take this to the ground, he'll absolutely have advantage. We all saw it. Marcin Tybura did to Jonathan Diniz, absolutely exposing that area of his game. And I think it could be an avenue for Mario Pinto, but Mario Pinto wants to stand and bang, dude. But this guy went out there, looked good in his continued series fight against Camacho, did what he needed to do against Austin Lane. And, dude, he knocked out Benjamin Sehick, bro, this 6'9" Bosnian dude, nicknamed Dragon of Bosnia. Like, tell me that isn't sick, you know, sick nickname. Hopefully this guy finds his way to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, because a 6'9" Bosnian could add some value to the promotion in the thin heavyweight division. But back to the topic at hand, you know, you got Portugal versus Brazil, you know, they speak the same. They have the same native tongue in their respective lands. I think this could be a very strong mid-rivalry right here. You know, Mario Pinto, his physique is very good for this division. He looks lean. He looks muscular. And I think that... No pause. I think that he's going to be able to get a knockout in this one, probably around the second round. You know, I think this fight does make it that far. Diniz did have good hands against Alvin Guzzi Hines. Guzzi Hines just took 50 straight hooks to the face and literally just smiled like this psychopath he is. So that is what it is. I think Mario Pinto is going to be a little bit better defensively, and that he's going to march down Jonathan Diniz and show that he is the future of this division as he marches towards a ranked opportunity. Mario Pinto, second round KO on the feet, right hook to the jaw with 2 minutes and 17 seconds in the second round.
I fear your friend, the Dragon of Bosnia, will not be making it to the UFC unless he strings some wins together, because he's 8-6 on a 3-fight losing streak.
That's sad.
Yeah. Well, he's also 6'9". Ask Stefan Struve how that went.
Mm-hmm.
That'll move us straight into the next one here. We have Vicente Leque facing off against Joel Alvarez. Mr. Alvarez here coming off of a victory in his last fight against Ricard Close. He knocked him out in the first round. Before that, he knocked out Brenninger in the third round of that bout. And before that, he beat whatever the fuck that is with second round submission. 3-fight win streak for him on this one, facing off against Vicente Leque, who was submitted in his last fight by Kevin Holland, I believe via Anaconda choke. Before that, he won his fight against Gorimbo and lost in knockout fashion to Buckley in the fight before that. So what we have here, I believe Vicente Lecue's time as a welterweight menace has come to a close here, and I think Joel Alvarez will starch this man into the shadow realm, and I got a second round knockout victory for Joel Alvarez in this one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a sad fight, you know. It's not nearly as nice to the opponent as he had with Ponzinibbio. You know, I was going to pick him to beat Ponzinibbio, but Santiago was unable to make his appearance in Brazil. And you got one of the best up-and-coming prospects in the sport right now, in my humble opinion. Vicente Luque, he's 33 years old. He has 35 fights, but he probably has about 70 fights worth of damage, truthfully. He's a warrior, you know, but like he lacks a lot defensively. He's walked through a lot of damage. He had brain surgery within the last few years here. Like he has been fucked up. You know, is he a savvy vet with an opportunity to win any fight? Sure. You know, but I think this line is not even insane. I think minus 700. I think that's fair. I think Joel Alvarez is going to get a finish. He's 6'3". He's going to be fighting at 170 now, which I think is a more natural weight class. I think the power is going to carry over, and I think he's going to add a lot to a division that's already incredibly stacked. I mean, give me an early finish here too. I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to say this is done in the first. I think he's going to find his shot pretty early, just like he did against Drakkar Klose, another guy who's taken quite a bit of damage, you know. So, Joel Alvarez, first round knockout, and I think after this win that he will get an exciting fight near the rankings, hopefully against Daniel Rodriguez. Hopefully.
Let's see what I smell it. I smell what you're stepping in. That'll move us to the next one, where we will have number 6 ranked Davison Figueiredo facing off against 15th ranked Montel Quick Jackson. This is a very interesting stylistic matchup by the UFC matchmakers. A very interesting height matchup as well. About 5-6 inches of height advantage for Montel Jackson, who will forever be most famous for his 18-second knockout of Damon the Monster Blackshear, as Witt has so alluded to numerous times. Davison Figueiredo is a legend of the sport with a 24-5-1 record. He did come off of a devastating loss in his last fight due to his knee just deciding it didn't want to exist anymore. And he's back now, ready to go somehow. We'll see what happens with weigh-ins tomorrow, but as of now, he's ready to go. He's got a stiff competition, Montel Quick Jackson. I love Figueiredo, but I don't see him being able to pull this one off here. I think he's going to get finished in the second round by Quick Jackson here.
Yeah, I mean, Kron and I unanimously picked Figueiredo to beat Corey Sandhagen in the last fight, which ended up being very wrong. But, you know, I remember texting Kron the next day, and I was like, honestly, I'm a little bit concerned because Davison Figueiredo has never fought a guy that's 5'10", 5'11", and it looked like he was just trying to go for a heel hook the whole entire fight. The 9 minutes and 8 seconds it lasted, Davison Figueiredo was trying to get a heel hook, and the guy that was on top was just punching him in the head, which was Corey Sandhagen in that case. You know, I think Kron and I are both equally surprised that he's back in 5 months. I mean, it looked like it was going to be a pretty serious knee injury that was going to sideline him for at least a year, but he's back. He's fighting in Brazil. You know, Montel Quick Jackson has an opportunity to really take his career to the next level in this one. He'll be a top 6 fighter in this division, which is something that I really think he deserves. You know, Daniel Marcos tried to smudge him against the cage and take him down in the last one and make it ugly, but Montel Quick Jackson wasn't having any of it. He was getting him off the cage, and whenever he was able to piece him up. You know, Figueiredo's old, unfortunately. You know, everybody's favorite fighters have to lose at some point. He has lost his last 7 rounds of fighting. He lost all 5 to Peter Yan. He lost both rounds to Corey, you know, and now he's fighting a guy with a stupid amount of power. I think is close or does currently hold the bantamweight record for knockdowns. He's definitely in that vicinity. I think he's gonna get a cold flatline knockout here very early in the fight. I would pull out the wit special and say first 7 minutes, but I'm going to say in the first round. And after that happens, I will be pouring one out in the sink for Davison Figueiredo.
That'll move us to the pinnacle event of the evening. We have Charles do Bronx Oliveira facing off against Mateus Gamrot. Number 4 versus number 8 here. Charles Oliveira, we don't even really need to tell you what happened to him in his last fight, but we're going to anyways. He has 35 wins, 31 finishes. He had a chance at taking the title in his last fight. He got absolutely fucking flatlined by Ilia Topuria, as accurately predicted on Knockout Analysis.
Amen.
Do Bronx has no business fighting for the title, let alone fighting Ilia Topuria for the title. Now he's going to get faced off against Mateus Gamrot. Charles Oliveira, another one. Absolute legend of the sport. 23-11 record in the UFC. My apologies to Charles Oliveira fans. It's going to be 23-12 after this one. He's going to get knocked out again. Possibly again in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, the country of Brazil was riding high last week after the Alex Pereira victory. But I think this Rio de Janeiro card is going to be titled When Brazilians Cry, you know. Montel Quick Jackson putting down Figgy. And Mateus Gamrot just putting a pace on Charles Oliveira for 5 rounds. You know, Crown and I talked about the possibilities for Oliveira in his last fight. You know, I was like, well, he could have gassed him out in the grappling. But I was like, what I think's going to happen here, and what we thought was going to happen, is this is going to be a very quick night. You know? And it was. And I don't really understand the logic for him taking a fight within 4 months after a knockout that was just absolutely devastating. That dude is
flatline.
That punch was very accurate. If Topuria threw it harder, that dude's head might have came off. Like it was just that stone cold accurate. And Rafael Fiziev was gonna be a tough matchup, who was the initial opponent. You know, I thought that was a crazy idea by the UFC to give him a striker after that knockout. But 2 weeks' notice, Mateus Gamrot takes this fight. Mateus Gamrot seems to not be in the best graces of the UFC. He got a fight with unranked Ludovic Klein last time as a 7th-ranked guy. Won that in flying colors, dominated the grappling, like 30-26 them. And they're going to give him Nazim Sadikov, you know, another unranked guy in the upcoming. So like, it seems like the UFC doesn't want him in the top 7. They're trying to give him another Polish man's Marcin Tybura type role in the lightweight division, Jared Cannonier type role, Rob Bont. You know, they're just going to keep giving him prospects until they beat him. Until he got the call for Charles Oliveira. You know, Charles Oliveira has been training for a striker who was never even going to dream of taking him down. And with 2 weeks, he's had to completely pivot his game plan in training camp to a guy that's going to be completely okay with going to the ground with him. I think this line is kind of nuts. Obviously Oliveira is a favorite, and people are going to gas his line because he's a huge name, and he just fought for the title. But I think realistically here, Mateus Gamrot is going to have a cardio advantage, and I think that in the late rounds he's really going to put a stamp on this one. I see a fourth or fifth round ground and pound TKO for Mateus Gamrot as he gets booed out of Brazil, and I don't know where he's going to go from there, but a title shot could be close to his near future if he goes and gets the finish in this one.
That'll bring us to the conclusion of this one. Be sure to check out our sponsors, Shank It Golf, W.GG, and CowboyRevolution.com. For the lifelong diehard UFC fans, don't think that we forgot, because we would never. We must end this video with a brief moment of silence for former UFC fighter Suman Mokhtarian, who tragically passed away a couple days ago now due to a gang-related shooting as he was running in his neighborhood in Sydney, Australia. So we'll end the video. We'll thank you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, check out the YouTube channel. We'll have this video up, and we have an interview with Tracy Reeder that will be up soon as well. Be sure to keep your eyes on that. We're going to end this video now with a 30-second moment of silence for Suman Mokhtarian. Rest in peace. Condolences to your family.